Hello and welcome to Peer Tutor Bootcamp Online Edition. If you are watching this video, hopefully it's because you are enrolled in either Mr. Zakimi or Ms. Healy's peer tutoring class. And before you come to class, we like to train you on a few basics that we feel will help you be a better and more confident peer tutor. Before we get started with our training, I want to let you know that in this class you're going to be held to a very high standard of responsibility. You're going to be assisting Mr. Aaron and myself as teachers, as well as our aides or paraprofessionals, with the instruction and monitoring of students with disabilities. And this is not a responsibility to be taken lightly. If you are looking for a class that is just going to be a chill out, easy A, this is not the class for you. And if you transfer out right now, I will not hold it against you. So the 3 P's of peer tutoring are proximity, praise, and precision requests. And we're going to go into each of these in depth. So our first P is proximity. If you are the child of a teacher, you've probably heard this word before, and as I explain it, you'll realize that you've actually had this done on you. So what is proximity? It's just how close you are to something. Sometimes your teachers will give you an assignment, and as everyone's working in class, your teachers will wander up and down the aisles to make sure everyone's got their cell phones put away, they're on task, seeing if students need help. We're going to practice the same principle in Mr. Aaron and my classroom as well. So what does that look like for us? We want you to make sure that no student is all alone. Sometimes I'll see 2 or 3 peer tutors sitting with a group of students and one of my students is all by themselves in the corner. I don't want to see that. I don't want my students to feel like they're being left out. Nobody likes to sit alone. And then if you're assigned to a group of students, make sure that all of the students in your group are within sight and sound. I don't want to look up from the group I'm working with and say, "Where's Billy?" and have you say, "Gee, Miss Healy, I don't know." Okay, that's an unacceptable answer. You should know where the group of students you're working with is at all times. If you're assigned to be somebody's buddy or partner, so in that situation it would be, I need you to stay with Billy. Okay, Billy needs help walking. You should be within arm's reach of Billy in case, he stumbles and needs you to support him. Or I might say, "Hey, I need you to be Billy's partner today. Make sure he doesn't wander out of class." Okay, you need to be pretty close to Billy, making sure that you're um, being responsible of where he's going and making sure he gets back to our classroom safely. Our second P is praise. Everybody likes to be told they're doing a good job, and our students are no different. So if I just shout out into the ether, "Good job," that's not what we would call good praise. Good praise has 2 very important qualities. The first one is it needs to be individualized. That means we want it to be about a specific student or a small group of students. So I don't just want to say "good job" to the whole class. I want to say, "Billy, good job," right? Or "Red team, good job." And then our second point is it needs to be specific. We want to name the behavior that we're praising for. So I want to say something like, "Billy, thanks for being in your seat," or "Red team, thanks for being on task," right? Or "Thanks for writing that down. Thanks for looking at me." This not only lets these students who are being praised know what they're doing and know that they're doing the right thing and they're on the right track, but it can also serve as a way to give kind of a clue to the other students in the classroom that may not be sure what to do or what I am looking for, or just kind of clue them into, "Oh, well, the red team's getting praised for being in their seats and writing things down. I should be in my seat and writing things down too." So this leads us into what we call praise around. And this is something that you might be asked to do. So praising around is when you're going to give that individual and specific praise to students who are behaving appropriately in close proximity to a student who is misbehaving. So say, for example, Billy is out of his seat and he's kind of wandering around the classroom. I might say, peer tutor, can you praise around? And you'll say, sure. And you'll start saying, student number 1, thank you for being in your seat. Student number 2, thank you for being in your seat. Student number 3, thanks for being in your seat. And then Billy's hearing, thanks for being in your seat, thanks for being in your seat, thanks for being in your seat. He thinks, oh, everyone who's in their seat is getting told good job for being in their seat. Maybe if I sit down, I'll get told good job too. And this seems very obvious and a little bit babyish, but this is a very good technique that allows us to gently point out misbehavior without directing our focus at the student that's misbehaving. It lets us point out the correct behavior so that that student has a chance to self-correct and choose the correct behavior on their own, which is huge for our students. We want to teach self-advocacy. We want to teach self-correction. So by using specific praise and praising around, we can help our students make better choices for themselves. And a quick note, this should only be used with mildly disruptive behaviors. I'm not going to ask you to praise around if a student is having a full-blown tantrum on the floor. If a student has reached that point of frustration, they're not listening. They don't care about praise. Obviously, there's something bigger going on. Something is upsetting them. And if that is the case, then you should go get a teacher or another adult in the classroom who's familiar with the student who can help them work through whatever has them in that kind of emotional state. So we want to use praise around for off-task behavior, out-of-seat behavior, just kind of those little smaller, slightly disruptive behaviors. So that leads us to our third P, which is a precision request. So a precision request is direction or instruction that's disguised as a question. So I'm not trying to be sneaky and I'm not telling you to lie to my students. It's just a very specific request. We're not asking a question. So there's a difference between will you take out the garbage, if your mom or dad asks you, hey, will you take out the garbage? That opens you up to say yes, no, right? We don't want to give, if we're giving a direction that the student needs to follow, either for their own safety or because it's time to do a new activity or we're transitioning or they just need to get on task, we don't want to give them an option, right? We're giving them instruction, we're giving them a direction, and we'd like them to follow it. So if you think of the will you take out the garbage, that's a question. I didn't put a question mark there. That's a question and opens us up for a yes or no versus please take out the garbage. That's not a question. I'm not asking anything. I am saying please though because I want you to know that I am trying to be polite and I'd like you to do the thing. You still have a choice. You can tell me, forget you, Miss Healy, I'm not doing it. But I'm not asking a question, if that makes sense. So a precision request is very formulaic and it follows a very specific script, which I will go over in just a minute. And proximity is important. Don't yell a precision request across the room, right? If you're going to go into this very specific request, very specific script, you need to be close to the student. So, a precision request, step 1, we're going to say the student's name, please, and then our request, just like my earlier example, son or daughter, please take out the garbage. Or alternately, you can say student, request, please. It doesn't really matter where you put that please, either before or after the request. You'll hear me mix it up in class. Sometimes it will be sit down, please, or please sit down. Either way is fine. It doesn't really matter where that please goes. But that please is important. You know, we're using our polite words, right? And then you're going to give the student a little bit of time to think about it, to decide if they're going to comply or not comply. And did they listen? If they did, then we want to praise. Oh, thank you so much for sitting down. Great job. Or thank you for following directions the first time. I really appreciate that. That was great. If they didn't, then we're going to go on to step 2. So in step 2, we're going to change our tone just a little bit, and we're going to be a little bit more firm. And we're going, instead of this please, we've switched out for I need you to, whatever we've requested, and we've also added now. So they understand that there is a sense of urgency to our request. So it would be something like, the first time I said it, it was, student, sit down, please. The second time I say it, it's going to be, student, I need you to sit down now. So I'm not yelling, I'm not angry, but my tone is a little bit more firm so they understand that this is a serious request and I'm not playing a game. I'm giving instruction. Again, we're going to say, hey, did they do the thing? If they did the thing, yay, we're going to praise, we're going to tell them thank you, we're going to tell them that we're so happy that they follow the directions. If they didn't, then we're going to go on to step 3. So step 3 is, we're going to say, student, if you do not request now, consequence. So this is an additional step that I like to use for my students. If you go into special education, if you go into education as a career, if you take classes on behavior modification, you might not see this as step 3. But I like to add it for my students because a lot of them do have issues with their short and long-term memory. So I just like to remind them of what the consequence will be. For my classroom and Mr. Aaron's classroom, the general consequence is losing a point in class dojo. That's just kind of our go-to reward system, as well as our reductive consequence system. So after you've reminded them of what the consequence will be, you're going to say, did they do the thing? If they did the thing, then what we're going to do? We're going to praise, 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 tell them thank you, we're so proud of them, they made a really good choice. If not, then we have to go to step 4, which it's very important that we say this. We let them know, Billy, that is not following directions. We need to be very clear and let them know that they did not follow directions. We gave them 3 chances to follow directions and they didn't. So that is not following directions, and we're going to reinforce the consequence. So if up here I said I'm going to take away a point in class dojo, then down here I am immediately, after these words are out of my mouth, I'm going to go over to the computer, I'm going to take away a point from class dojo. Follow through is super, super important. Think about, I'm sure there's been some adult in your life who said they were going to follow through with either a reward or a punishment or a promise, and they didn't follow through. And after that, you don't take them as seriously as you do before. So part of building trust with the peers here is, most of the time we want your interactions with them to be fun, to be happy, to have positive reinforcement all the way. But if you do have to be firm with them, they need to know that you're a person that is serious and that when you say something, you're going to follow through. So the last step, after you've done all these 4 things, is you're going to repeat it. So you're just going to go right back up to step 1 and say, student, please sit down. And for your sake, I don't want you guys to do this more than 2 times. So if you shouldn't do this whole process more than 3 times. If you've gone through this 3 times, it's probably been about 4, maybe 5 minutes. It's time to have someone else step in, to have Miss Healy step in, or one of my paraeducators step in, and we can take more strict measures. Because again, as I said before, I want your interactions with my students to be far more positive, and you should never feel like you have to physically move a student or like drag them somewhere or lift them up off the floor or, push their chair across the room. Um, so if you feel like your approach isn't working, feel free to come get a teacher. Don't feel like you have to handle that by yourself. So the most important part of a precision request is time. Between each question, you've got to give the student time to think about what you've asked them to do and to do it. So rule of thumb is 5 to 10 seconds, depending on the student. Some students, 5 seconds is plenty of time. For some students, they might need 10, they might need 15. So as you're getting to know students, a good general rule is to give a very generous 10 count. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Not so slow that it's doubling their time, but slow enough that you're giving them time to comply and to think about it. This is really important because some of our students have slower processing speed, or they might need additional thinking time. So if I were to say, everybody pencils down, most of you could do that in 1 to 2 seconds. For some of our students, they hear the phrase, everybody pencils down, and they think, okay, everybody pencils down. That means the pencil in my hand has to go onto the table. Okay, I'm putting it on the table. And that whole process could take anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 seconds, depending on the student. So you definitely want to make sure you're giving that time, because we want to build them up for success. We want to set them up for success in every way we can. So by giving them that time to listen and to follow the direction, we're setting them up to be praised rather than slowly getting more and more firm in our requests. If a student becomes threatening or aggressive, the first thing you should do is stay safe. If a student is going to not be respectful or kind to you, then you need to make sure that your safety comes first. Move to a safe distance, inform a teacher or nearby adult. Yes, even if that means leaving the student alone. So earlier I told you, if you're assigned to be somebody's buddy, don't let them run off. But if you're assigned to be somebody's buddy and they say that they're going to punch you in the face and then take a swing at you, it's time for you to get an adult, and if that student runs off, then we will deal with that. But it is very important to both Mr. Aaron and myself that our peer tutors stay safe, and that you feel that our classrooms are a safe environment. As of yet, we haven't had any serious issues with aggression, but I just like to throw it out there so that if the situation does occur, you don't feel completely unprepared and you know how to respond. That is the end of Peer Tutor Boot Camp. Please take the quiz underneath this video. You can take it multiple times until you feel confident with your answers. If you have any questions, or if anything that I've gone over in the video has been confusing, do not hesitate to ask. Mr. Aaron and I are happy to answer your questions. Don't ever feel like it's a stupid question or you should just know the answer. Please come to us. We're happy to talk to you about any questions or concerns that you have. Thanks for joining me in this online session of Peer Tutor Boot Camp, and Mr. Aaron and I look forward to working with you this coming semester.